On today's episode, I am so excited to be joined by none other than the CEO of Interview Connections and co-owner Margy Feldhune. You all know her. You all love her. Hi, Margy.
Hi.
So we are talking about what I like to call a success equation. Um, so when Margy and I were doing some co-working together, preparing for our virtual conference, we were just like having a great conversation around like what goes into success, right? Positive mindset, thoughts. And by working together in person, we were like, oh my God, like we've really been missing this, right? This in-person energy. And really what comes from that in-person energy is fun and playfulness. And Margy, you've also, posted a lot of, I mean, not like a lot, but like enough where it's noticeable.
Am I posting too much?
So you've been posting about like, you'll say like play as an adult is good. Like having fun as an adult is good. I didn't hit record on my phone. So I wanted to talk about this because you're so good about mindset and really being vigilant about like your thoughts that you're having. And then also you really are an advocate for incorporating playfulness and fun to, impact our feelings, right? Because it's all intertwined. So let's first talk about, thoughts. So you mentioned also recently that this is the stuff you've been doing forever. It's not like something you read in a book this year, but now that like we're doing more coaching around it, you're like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I've been doing this. Right. So just talk a little bit about your practices for cultivating a really positive mindset and, the right types of thoughts and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I love this stuff and it's cool. And I think this is a journey that a lot of people, when they start coaching, go on, where it's like something that I've always done for myself, but never really like thought about or really knew how to vocalize. So now this has been a very cool journey of starting to like share what I do with other people and what's worked for me. So let's see. So taking you back to when I was 19, I was in college. And I had a really, like, even since I was a little kid, like had really bad, like anxiety and OCD and depression. And part of that was just like growing up in a house with a lot of mental illness. And like when kids don't have someone who's emotionally attuned to them and like present with them, there can be side effects. And a lot of them are like within that inner landscape of your mind. So you have these thoughts and feelings about the type of person that you are and the way that the world is that feel totally real, that you don't realize are like stories and thoughts. It just feels like this is what life is. This is what my life is. So it really came from a place of being really miserable for a really long time, really anxious, really stressed out. And I found the power of now. Someone I was dating at the time, his mom gave it to me. And I actually ran like 5 years ago, I ran into her and I was like, you like changed my life. And she was like, really? Because it wasn't like this big emotional thing. She was like, hey, I really like this book. I think you'd like it. Here you go. And I still have that copy. And that was really the first time I heard anything like that about this idea that you aren't your thoughts, that like all that stuff that I had taken for granted was just reality. It was who I was. It was the way the world was. Like, maybe that's not the whole story. Mm-hmm. And this was it really blew my mind. So I read this book. I actually first opened it and then closed it and put it back because I was like, I didn't want it. Like, I didn't want to change. There was like a part of me that was like afraid of the truth and afraid, like when you create this world that's like so small and so negative, there's a big part of you that wants to defend it. So it was like, it was what I knew. So I was like terrified to leave it, even though it wasn't like a happy world that I created. So something like that, where really on the first page, it was challenging that. I was like, nope. But then I held on to the book, and I really recommend for people who's like, they have a resource or something, a book that someone's given them, if it's not the right time, hold on to it with like spiritual stuff. Don't, hold on to every piece of clutter, but like sometimes you're just not ready, but you can sense that it is something that would be good for you. So hold on to it. And then when the time is right, you'll just be drawn to it. And so that's what happened to me. I started actually reading it. I remember being on like the bus to URI, University of Rhode Island, opening this book. And that book is cool because it's very much an immersive experience. Like when you're reading the words, it brings you to that place of presence. So it's almost not even like about the words in the book or it being really well written. It's like, it's a meditative experience to read it. And that was good for me because at that point, I wouldn't have been willing to meditate or do anything. So it sort of tricked me into this new state of mind. And I remember sitting on the bus, reading this book. I looked up, there was maybe a couple other people on the bus. I looked up at the front of the bus and it was like I was seeing the bus for the first time. Like it was just this incredible feeling of presence, of actually looking at the bus. I've ridden the bus, to and from school every single weekday for 3 years. I knew what the bus looked like, but I like saw the bus for the first time. And that was a really incredible moment. I want to add though, it was not like flipping a switch, and it's still not. Like, it wasn't like, then I stopped being depressed, like I wasn't transformed in that moment of reading that book, but that is what started it. And I started being a little more open-minded. I started coming across these resources for personal development and being more and more open to them. So it is a lifelong journey. And I just don't want people to get discouraged if you like read a book that's supposed to be so life-changing and you feel changed, but then you go back to your old habit of being negative or being rude or feeling like you're toxic. It's not a flip of a switch, but those little moments are really important. And you have them no matter what. Like maybe it's like when you're taking a walk outside or you're having a great conversation or you're like looking at a flower, like those seconds, those moments matter. And I think sometimes we can feel like we'll have these great moments, but then we'll go back into our old patterns and we'll be like, I guess I imagined it and that wasn't anything because I haven't changed. It doesn't work. So those moments do matter, and it does work even if you're not transformed immediately.
Yeah. So really learning how to be present and be in the now is transformational, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it's an ongoing journey. I want you to talk a little bit about your relationship with your thoughts, and specifically thoughts being plural, because I know for me, I've become very self-aware this week about the analogy I used on my call with Stacy, one of our coaches, was like, it's like there's multiple speakers in my head and some are really loud and some are really quiet. And I've had to like turn down the volume on some of the louder ones to hear some of the quieter ones. So I don't know. I just want to hear more about like, how do you relate to the thoughts in your head?
Yes, so I think about this often because I'm very into calendars. And so there's like the work on my calendar that I do, like the meetings and like the CEO stuff, but 24 hours a day, I am watching my thoughts. Like I never stop. And it's a practice that took time to get into. And I just love it. Like it is a practice though. Like it takes time and you can call it mindfulness, you can call it whatever you want, but noticing these things, because so many of them are so automatic. It's not a thought like there's a narrator in your head that's saying like, I guess I'm not good enough. Like it happens in a second. It's like, it's so much faster than it would take to narrate the thought of like the I'm not good enough, feeling bad. It's like less than a second. So I think looking at your thoughts can be a little bit misleading because it's like you're saying there's a million things happening all at once in your brain and it taking a half a second, right? So it's not like Morgan Freeman's like narrating this whole monologue. There's a lot going on. It's happening really fast. So watching those things, the big thing that I've noticed though, is it's less about your thoughts and more about your feelings. Because you can kind of control your thoughts, sort of. Like you can definitely control what you say. like you can speak nothing but positivity and have terrible results, because what you resonate with, what the universe sends back to you is really about your feelings. Like that's your energy. So you could say like, I'm going to go bankrupt, but if you're feeling like amazing, you're probably actually going to attract something positive. Words are important. I mean, don't say that, but like, it's very hard to watch every single thought because of what you just said, Jess. There's so many of them. So a really good indicator is to actually watch your feelings. And once you get really sensitive to that emotional guidance system and you feel like you'll be doing nothing, right? And you'll suddenly feel a dip and nothing happened. So you know that it was a thought. And that's when you're like, okay, what did I just think? And then I kind of backtrack. So if it's confusing to focus on all those millions of thoughts that are happening all the time, just really focus on how you're feeling. And when you feel a dip or you feel an uptick in your emotion and feeling good, what was that thought? And really getting acquainted with who you are, like the stories that you tell about yourself, especially the things like, what are the things about you that are 100% true? That like, that's just who you are. Those aren't real, but find those, dig those out. And it's not about like, what am I thinking? Like, you don't have a loop of like, I'm not good enough. Probably it's these little things that are like, oh, I'm always like this, or I couldn't do that because I always do this. And noticing what are those things that you feel like you couldn't change about yourself? That is like, everybody says I'm like this. I've always been like this. I can't change that. Watch those loops.
Yeah. I love how you explained to really look at your feelings, because your feelings, there is a connection, right? Like if, you know, what you're feeling and what you're thinking, but the feeling is the energy. And one of the reasons I really wanted to do this episode and highlight you as the expert is because you, as you said, focus on this like 24/7. Like it is something that you are so like disciplined about, and you focus on it at so much. So I want to get into talking about how to impact your feelings, and a big part of it being like having fun and incorporating playfulness. Because I mean, one thing that we had talked about in that conversation when we were working together, it's like, you can have like all the affirmations of like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But if you're not feeling great, and if you're feeling stressed and you're not having fun, I don't care how much you write and journal and all that, how much you focus on your thoughts. If you're not feeling great, it's not really going to happen, as you just said. So talk a little bit about the importance of fun and playfulness in your life. Yeah,
I think that is like the biggest thing. Like when you are having fun, when you're playing around, and it can be, you could do anything and have fun with it, but really putting the question out there of like, how could I have fun with this? How could I make this fun? And that fun and that playfulness is huge. And I think everybody has the capacity for it. It's not that you need to get yourself to be more fun. It's more looking at the things that block your fun, right? Because I have like a very like playful energy. Like I love comedy. I love joking around. And I know that when I'm like that, I'm really like being myself and really in touch with source or whatever you want to call it. And when I'm really fearful, like I'm not joking around, you know, like, so I can feel that too, right? If I'm like getting worried about something, I'm trying to control the situation, like that I'm not telling jokes and I'm not having fun, and you can feel it. So staying in that playful energy more, noticing what triggers it, noticing what ruins it for you, I think is really big. And a big part of it for me, and like why I love working with you, Jess, is being together. That type of in-person collaboration and creativity, I really love. Like I've really learned that I thrive. I'm an introvert. I love alone time. But when working on a project, when doing work, it's much more fun to me to work with somebody else and talk things through with somebody else. And I went to school for art, and I thought that I would be a professional painter. And not only did it not look like that was going to help me achieve my financial goals, which were lofty, but I found it incredibly isolating. And that's the same reason I hired a ghostwriter to write the second half of my book that I'm writing right now, because I could grind this out, but it's so isolating and it felt so bad. And I just paid attention to that energy because like sitting alone in a room and creating that way just doesn't work for me. It's not fun. But when Jess and I are in a room together and we've got our whiteboards and we're coming up with this stuff, yes, we're technically working, but it feels like fun. So for me, doing work and businesses with friends and people I enjoy and having fun is a big part of what helps keep it light for me.
Yeah. And you just got back from your first trip to Disney World and it looks like you had so much fun. And I just think this is like interesting because as you said on your social media post, like you've kind of always been a Disney skeptic. Like why would an adult want to go stand in line in 90-degree heat? Right. But then you had like the best time. You were like, midnight, you were at the Boo Bash, posting on your story and stuff. Like you clearly had such a great time. Did you bring back any, life or business lessons from kind of being a kid for a few days?
Yes, it was definitely helpful to be a kid. And yeah, I had always been kind of anti-Disney, like, because I just don't have the type of family that would like go to an amusement park or a theme park. Like my mom, when my mom heard I was going to Disney, she's like, oh God, awful. And I was like, this is why I haven't been. But yeah, I don't like the heat. I don't like standing in line. I don't love going to Florida. No offense. But it's just like, I was just like, I don't get it. But when I actually experienced it, I was open, which was really helpful. I had an open mind of like enjoying it and I loved it. And the thing I loved about Disney was, first of all, as an adult, you could just get to play because it's all just games and rides and snacks. And doing that for 3 or 4 days straight as an adult just like doesn't usually happen. So it was really exciting to have that like wonder and to be on these different rides and these different experiences and to just kind of immerse yourself in that and enjoy it. And it did help me be present too, because all these different rides, they're not all roller coasters. A lot of them are like experiential. There's a story and they take you through this world and it's very cool. And it makes you very present because especially if you haven't been there before. So I would also say that a big lesson was just a documentary that we watched to get out of the heat because they have all these shows that are air conditioned and indoors. So it's like after a few like long standing in line in the heat, you go see a show. So we went to see one that was about Walt Disney's life. And I felt like I got so much out of that. And one of the big things I got was this idea, Disney shouldn't have worked. In my opinion, Disneyland shouldn't have worked. It sounds like a money pit, right? He was like, he mortgaged everything. He went deep into debt and he's like, but he had kids and every Saturday was like dad and kids day. And he was like, all the activities to do with little kids are so boring. I hate this. Like, I cannot watch these kids go on a carousel again. So he wanted something where parents and kids could like have fun together. And that was this like guiding light for him. He wasn't trying to build this like multi-billion-dollar empire. He wanted to create this thing that he knew was possible. And he mortgaged everything. I mean, there were some very bad financial decisions happening, but it worked. I mean, when you experience, that was Disneyland, but now Disney World, which is so much bigger, it's absolutely crazy to me that these people of all different ages and races from all different countries are coming together to play and experience this. And it was just, I would sit on the bus from our hotel every day to the park we were going to and just look around at such a huge diversity of people who were all just there to play. And it was so interesting because I probably would have been one of the people who told him it was a stupid idea. And like being aware of that was really interesting to me. So that was a big takeaway too, of this idea that even if on paper, it's like, this is a money pit, it'll never work. It's such a big project. It's so expensive. If you have that conviction that comes from something different than just trying to scale something profitable, but really wanting to have an impact, then anything is possible. Because it was shocking to see how many people pay the money and the time to go experience this and go again and again and again.
I love it. And now I want to go, although I'm hearing it might be a little, it's a different experience with kids. But I mean, as a mom, I can say I do get these opportunities to play, although it's different if you have kids with you, because then you're like watching them.
Yeah.
But I love it. No, I love it so much. So, I mean, I do think we're going to go to Disney World soon because it looks so fun. And it's fun. You have to play, you have to have fun, and really watch your energy. So do you have any final tips or words of wisdom for our listeners around mindset, thoughts, and then also, energy and fun?
Yeah, this is also from Walt Disney, but I think and I've been reading a lot of books on the brain right now, and people do this thing where you can look back 10 years ago and see, yeah, I'm a totally different person. I've changed so much, but we can't look 10 years ahead and know what we'll be like. We think that we're done. So we know we've been growing and evolving, but we always think we're in our final state at every second in the present moment. And I think that causes problems for people because they don't know what's possible for them because they can't imagine it. And if you're in a failure right now, it feels like that's the end of your story. You always feel like you're at the end of your story, and that's where the narrative ends, but it doesn't. So my biggest thing would be not to get discouraged. If you feel negative, if something negative happens to you, if you fail at mindfulness and you spend 5 years totally unconscious and it's just like lost time where you're totally toxic, you can always come back in the moment. Like there's nothing you can't come back from. And one of the stories I loved was he, started this animation studio and he created this rabbit named Oswald. And it looked like Oswald was going to be his thing, right? Like that's his thing. He's done it. And I think we all get in that trap of like, this has to work because this is my break. Like this is it. And then because of a loophole in a contract, he lost Oswald. He lost the rights to Oswald and all the animators that he had. And he fell into like a depression. It was really hard for him because he believed that Oswald was it. And then he created Mickey Mouse. And it's crazy. So I just want people, if you have your thing, this big project or that one business that you feel like this is it for me and it fails, like it's okay. It's just your Oswald. Like you will still have your Mickey. And Bob Iger, whose book I read, who I love, who was the CEO of Disney and just stepped down, one of the things he did in a contract negotiation with someone who wanted to get out of their contract early, I think from ABC, who owned the rights to Oswald, he worked into the negotiation to give Oswald back to Disney, and Oswald is now owned by Disney again.
Oh my God, I have chills.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, Margy. Thanks for being our expert today. So come connect with us online. Thank you for listening. Interviewconnections.com is where you can connect with us and keep listening to Monetize the Mic. In the next episode, we are going to talk about more books and all of Margy's brilliance she gets from these amazing books she's referencing. So we'll see you then.
Yay. Bye.